dark means different things to a lot of people. I like exploring it creatively. It reflects my inner world, like things I think about a lot. But I hope it's never this like woe is me kind of thing. I want it to be woe is us. Like,
Yeah, I like that. I
yeah.
like that.
Microphone check, 1 2. What is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service. Here we are again at the end of a rainbow. Throughout my entire life, music has consistently been a vital channel for me to process emotions and just make sense of the world. Very few artists have allowed me to do this and explore particularly the darkness and melancholy swirling around my head quite like Sadistik has. Since the moment I first heard Sadistik's music over a decade ago, I was taken aback by his beautifully poetic and vulnerable approach to creating hip hop music, and his knack for collaborating with producers who understood this artistic vision, creating moody, dark, and cinematic soundscapes for his words, working with the likes of Blue Sky Black Death, Kno of CunninLynguists fame, and most recently Maulskull, the producer for his latest opus, Oblivion Theater. In today's episode, we dive into Sadistik's affinity for the darker things of life, his writing process, and what makes his new project with Maulskull, Oblivion Theater, so special. The Rap Music Plug podcast, presented by QLC TV, is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth artist interviews, album reviews, and general rap commentary on the best that the underground rap scene has to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show.
Sadistik, how you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
And really appreciate you being on the show. I mean, I've been bumping your music for over a decade, and I mean, there's not many artists I can honestly say that and truthfully say like I'm still just as big of a fan as I was back then. And I just think you're based on this latest album, you're making some of your best music yet. So really appreciate it.
It's an honor, man. 10 years is a long time.
Very, very long, very long. And I want to start off with this, like a bit of a personal anecdote because it speaks to really how much I appreciate your music. So, you know, as I said, I've been listening to your music for over a decade now, but in particular, there was a time that was really difficult in my life in 2019 when I experienced one of the very few amount of times this has happened where like music hits me so hard emotionally that it's so emotionally like of an experience that I actually need to avoid it sometimes. And that happened with Haunted Gardens. And I mean that as a huge compliment because that was probably like the biggest period of like depression post university, at least in my adult life. And I just feel like the way you described and depicted the melancholy, the sadness you speak on is so raw, like a song like The Closer where you have that part where you're like, Dear Depression, you robbed me of my essence. That whole part,
Yeah.
I just felt very seen, you know, and I just felt like I was like, it made me kind of really realize like I have like an addiction to being sad almost like and constantly going and burrowing myself in there. And I just think you put it into words so perfectly. And I think that just speaks to like generally what you've done so much in your career, which is I think you do a great job of bringing the beauty and talking about the beauty and the hope within all this darkness. And I just think you explore it with a really interesting lens. And so with that, I just am curious, like, why do you feel so particularly drawn to dig into these darker emotions and ideas in your music? And like, what value do you see in this kind of form of expression, whether it be for you or the audience?
I mean, if I'm being honest, it's for me, not the audience. It's more, it's all just one big project to me, all different like pieces of one statue, but like with the dark themes, it's just human to me. I don't know. I've always been drawn to it since I was young. Um, I think everybody is in different ways. You know, we avoid it. We tend to avoid it. I tend to lean into it. Might be part of the difference. But even when I was really young, I was just surrounded by pretty dark things. My mom is a big true crime head, like kind of an OG one. So I was reading like serial killer books in first and second grade, and I just had interest in that stuff. I don't know. I used to go to the public library and just try to find like the scariest or most fucked up books I
Hmm.
could find. Or, always just it's just a curiosity about the human side of it, you know. That's why like songs like Eileen Vernos and there's these kind of extreme contrasts and comparing like human sympathetic elements to monstrous deeds. And it's just interesting.
Yeah, I really find it fascinating the way you do it because it's like really a strong prevalent feeling in your music, but yet like I said, it doesn't feel overbearing, which is really hard to do. Like there's a lot of other artists that make music that explore kind of similar themes, but sometimes it's just too much and it just feels like you're overdoing it, or I'm just like I just leave the experience feeling like genuinely depressed and like
It's a delicate
gross.
thing.
Yeah.
Some people's like dark themes come off more as an aesthetic as opposed to like an actual internal thing. Sometimes it can seem genuine, but it's so on the head or so heavy that even if it's good or I like it, it's kind of hard to chew on it. I tend to like very heavy, bleak things, but some stuff, kind of like what you were saying, if you're going through certain things, like sometimes you don't want to just stare it directly in the face. So it's kind of a delicate thing, and dark music is such it's so in vogue now. It's a pop thing now. So it's just such a big blanket term, and there's a lot of like to what's dark to a lot of people, to me just like it doesn't resonate the same way. I'm like, really, this upsets you? Okay, like maybe I'm just desensitized, but yeah, dark means different things to a lot of people. But I like exploring it creatively. It reflects my inner world, like things I think about a lot. But I hope it's never this like woe is me kind of thing, because that kind of, as a listener, exhausts me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you go about it, it's definitely not woe is me. It's more like, as you said, yeah, it's just like it feels very
Woe
honest.
is us. I want it to be woe is us. Like,
And I like that. I like that. I like that.
that's,
Yeah, because you do really connect. Like I think especially on this new album, which we'll get to in more depth at the end of this conversation. But I think you can kind of speak to things in a really complete, fulsome way. So it's like even when you're not getting really specific about some particular societal event, you are speaking about it more abstractly, and it kind of feels like it's connecting all of us in that. Like I feel like it can bring a
yeah,
lot of people in versus kind of excluding
that's
people.
music to my ears. You're putting into words a lot of the design of it. So like when you say specific, it's like specific things going on in the world, or that there's certain things I purposely avoid to date my work, saying brand names or certain technologies, or like, because it's just one of those things where it's cool in a way, but I hear some music and they'll just name drop certain things, and I'm like, oof, like I feel like the uncle at the barbecue now, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is classic, it's old. So nothing against people that do that, but and I just enjoy abstract more. There's more I feel like I can do with it. And there's a lot of people who rap about very literal things, and they're good at it. And I'd rather kind of have my niche.
Hmm. Yeah. And I wonder when you're creating this kind of music that definitely feels like heavy, very emotional, very honest, like how is that experience for you? Does it take a lot out of you to kind of get into that mind state to create in a way? Or?
Sometimes it depends. Sometimes it can be like a very heavy emotional experience, like some stuff on Haunted Gardens was. But more often than not, for me, the process is more therapeutic. it's like a subconscious housekeeping. When I'm in a good creative flow, I feel like my antennas on, and I can kind of close out other things, the art of not being distracted, basically. Sometimes I wonder if it's like, even as a full grown man, if someone has something traumatic happen in a movie, they'll lay their head on their wife's chest or their mother's chest, and it's like this universal thing to hear this like syncopated heartbeat that comforts us or whatever. And part of me feels like I'm just tapping into that infant in me still, where it's like, oh, I'm feeling emotions. I better go like listen to this pulsating rhythm for a while and write my journal. It's helpful for me. I mean, sometimes it's a brain scramble and tiring and certain things like that. But overall, it's very therapeutic for me. If I didn't write as consistently as I did, I don't know where I'd put that energy.
Yeah, I mean, even as like a listener, for me, it's therapeutic to listen to a lot of this type of music. I mean, generally, if I had to categorize all the music I listen to, a great deal of it, a disproportionate amount, is on the realms of more darker, more melancholy. It's just something about it has always attracted me, and I
And
and I
I
do
did
find
that
it's
for
kind of a
years.
release for me.
I did that for years before my first album came out or anybody was aware of who I was. Like, just for myself, I made a ton of really bad songs and things, just learning how to do it. But I was just constantly just kind of in my own little cave writing. It's just something I've done since I was a young teenager.
Hmm.
Even the balancing act, I released that like right when I finished college. But while I was in college, it was like I was constantly in my room by myself, just working on that. And I wasn't even thinking of it like a career. It was just something like I wanted to do.
Right, right. And like you did kind of talk about it earlier about how this kind of darker kind of feeling is more of an aesthetic a lot of times in pop music. Uh, there's so many names to kind of put to that example, like we don't even need to get into it, but that's definitely very true. But I do find with the way aesthetics play into your music, it does feel very genuine. I don't get that same feeling at all with some of those pop acts. You have a clear affinity for like the haunted, horrifying imagery, and even just like the music. It consistently has like these ethereal, spiritual singers or like melodies, whether it's a sample or not. Where did this, because you kind of mentioned it about early on with your family and your mother, like it being a true crime head, like, is that where this originated from, where you've always been just kind of like really adoring that kind of that aesthetic, that
I was drawn
feeling?
to it so young. I remember being in second grade, and I would go to the sixth grade section of the school library and just try it. And I would grab like all the Poe books or like, um, like teenage horror, whatever. I remember reading The Pit and the Pendulum with my dad when I was tiny, and him explaining to me what a pendulum was, and like, like I was just drawn to it early, and then being surrounded by serial killer books and a mother who constantly would talk about just like crazy, brutal shit that happens in the world, like Debbie Downer. So it just made me curious, and I studied psychology. I feel like it all is connected. I'm very interested in our brains, and especially like the social connection we make. Like social consciousness is something that interests me a lot, and I think that's something that over time I've realized is the secret power of music.
Yeah, and you also have like a clear, and I know you've said this in past interviews too, like you're a huge film person, like you love that. And I
Mm.
definitely feel like that cinematic aspect of music of movies, obviously, like it really comes through in your music. Like every album feels like its own motion picture, like it's all very
Thank you.
distinct,
Yeah,
full things.
that's what I'm gonna do next. Is I want to make films. That's gonna be the next project once this one is finished in my mind.
Oh, that's okay, shit. Well, damn. That's have you started doing any of the work to it, or is it just in the
Yeah,
infancy
yeah,
phase?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been putting work into it. I'm a couple years into a screenplay. I'm trying to finish this
Uh,
year.
Damn, that's good for you, man. That's exciting. That's really exciting.
I do love film a lot. It's just I don't know, nothing affects me in the ways I like as the way the movies do, certain kinds of movies.
Mm.
Um, and it's so appealing to me, just kind of the way that the things that I like. I really like puzzles and challenges and things like that. And the process of making a movie is just such a massive, complicated puzzle with so many tiny micro decisions along the way. And that's really appealing to me. It seems so challenging. And I don't know. The more I've kind of let that sink in or acknowledge that to myself, I've tried to be like, I tried to shit on people's movies less when they're bad. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's whack, but I could see the vision, you know. Firing on all cylinders, it's like it's every medium of art just squished into a moment, you know?
100%. Yeah, like I think over the past few years, I mean, I can't I watch movies. I'm also more of a TV show person. It might be just a result of me not having as much time. So like I always feel like I can't watch a movie whereas I could fit in a 40-minute episode or something. But
In a TV era.
yeah, but now like TV these days, like the quality, I feel like I've not watched a bad show, a bad movie in like 4 or 5 years. Like it's just
Oh my God,
so much good stuff out there.
man. I wish I had that um, viewpoint, but
But
uh,
I mean, you watch way more than
I
I
watch
do, I'm
terrible
sure.
things all the time. But I have a friend who told me he said there's two type of movie lovers. There's people that love movies that they love, and there's people who love movies. He's like, you're the latter. Um, I
Mm.
I I like B movies. I love like shitty movies. I probably love them more than good movies sometimes. I don't know. There's a lot to learn from them.
Yeah, there is. And I feel like as I've gotten sunk my teeth more and more into just listening to music and understanding the artist's perspective through the podcast and all that, it's that same idea of kind of like, as you said, analyzing creative decisions with movies and TV has become like so much more appealing to me. And I find
Yeah.
myself being like, damn, that was a really cool decision they made to like, to have the camera in that way. It made me
You can
feel
layer
something.
so much. You can
Yeah.
layer so many things, and that's just so appealing. How many things can I layer in a song? That's something I played with for years, but now, okay, you do that, you get all these layers in the song, and then that's just a layer of a bigger thing in the movie. It's like you can just, it's, I don't know, it's so fucking appealing. It's like this gigantic uh, labyrinth mountain
Yeah.
that I want.
Mr. Robot for me is a show. I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's
Yeah, I started it. It was a bit, it was a bit Polaniac for me.
wait, what does that mean? Planning?
It was just like super Fight Club in the
Okay,
dialogue.
yeah. It's definitely like a really,
Philosophy was super Tyler Durden, and it's like it was
yeah,
cool. I didn't finish it. I think I got like one season in.
yeah. It's I just was bringing it up because I felt like all the decisions with some of the weird camera angles, the music they use is all just like really
Yeah,
fascinating to
yeah,
me.
we're definitely in a new era of like quality cinematic TV because for so long, TV programming just assumed that everyone was a fucking idiot. It's pretty much how it went. Syndicated things, nothing was serial. Everything was just like, oh, they won't remember anything until Twin Peaks here came along.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of in my opinion, the first one that treated the audience like they were intelligent. And it's like, no, they can follow one mystery and try to find one answer throughout an entire season. And I feel like it's finally catching up. And so now
Mm-hmm.
we get all these great cinematographers and you know, in the last however many years, like all the top actors started doing TV where it used to be seen as below them. So I get the swing. It's cool. There's some amazing shit out there.
Even in like Bollywood, I'm a big fan of Bollywood, and I was never usually in previously until like maybe 3 4 years ago, and the same kind of trend is happening there, with all these like different kind of stories that are used to just not be in Bollywood that are more dark, more like real and gritty, as
Nice.
well as the big actors coming to TV. And there's so many good ones. Like I could go on for days.
Nice.
Uh,
Bollywood is a big gap in my movie knowledge that I need to fix.
I'll send you some after this because
Yeah, I'd
there's
love
many.
that. Did you see RRR?
I Have I seen that? I know about it. Have I seen that?
That shit was
Possibly.
amazing.
Oh,
It,
I don't think
it,
I have.
I would call it like joyous filmmaking. Like you just tell like everybody involved just had a fucking absolute blast. It's
Oh,
really
this is
dope.
sort of neat. Oh, this is like the last couple of years. Okay, I definitely have heard of it, but I didn't watch it. No.
Yeah, that was the last Indian movie that
Nice.
really.
So, when I think about kind of like how you've made a major way throughout your career, something I've really admired is that you've maintained like a signature sound, even though your albums from album to album can be pretty different. And it just felt like since day one, I when I heard you, I felt like I was listening to a fully realized artist with like a distinct voice already. And this is again like a decade plus ago. And I wonder like how were you able to discover your like quote unquote voice and the type of music you wanted to make? Like how did you land on that?
That's a complicated question, but part of it is me playing the producer in the classic sense, not in the person who makes the beat sense. But all of my projects, even if it has 10 different producers on it, like I'm kind of adjusting things and sewing beats together. And, you know, I just really hands on with that, with my mixing engineer and album structure, like the order. All of those things are very purposeful, and I have a certain kind of approach to it that I try to keep somewhat consistent. Initially, when I was working on the Balancing Act, the first album, I had a very distinct idea of what I wanted to do, and I couldn't find uh, a producer that had this same idea, and that was a big holdup for what I wanted. I was listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails and Cedar Rose and No Twist and I don't know, fucking Mars Volta. I was listening to a lot of stuff that had interesting structures, um, not just like the first chorus, outro, where there would be these. And I realized that certain bands, even if I didn't like the first minute of the song, I'd stick around because I didn't know what they were going to do.
Hmm.
It's exciting to me and interesting. Um, and I didn't think that was applied much in rap. And rap was my biggest passion, of course, at the time, more than the other bands and stuff I was listening to was like I probably got into them late because I was so into rap that I just like didn't really look at other stuff as much when I was younger. But I had an idea and I was like, I want these structures and change ups and I want it to be unpredictable and I want it to be super heavy and emotional and imbalanced. Like the balancing act is like sort of an ironic title because it's everything's leaning a certain way. Um, and when I came across Emancipator, he was that's when a lot of that clicked. But initially, it was an idea I had that I just had to figure out how to execute it. But over time, it's been more like choosing an umbrella theme or tone or mood, and just kind of finding it and using my own kind of filter for taste, what I think fits.
Yeah, I think that that kind of precision and focus is, I guess, the thing I took from that. It feels very deliberate, intentional. You know, like when I think about the way you write in general, that's like obviously one of like your standout traits. I think the poetry in your music is just sublime. Like I think of lines like, you know, from where you want me, which is probably honestly a line that is so good that I wish I not only wrote it, I wish I could like it just came to me and I could say this to like the girl I'm with or something because you say like anywhere you step no longer common ground. And I just that one always like that's one of my favorite songs from you. The beat from No, all of that's just fantastic. But that line is just such a it's just it speaks to just how much you can kind of hit that tone, hit that note so
Yeah,
perfectly.
I especially more lately, I would say the last like 5 years or so, I really love trying to find those like punchy, meaningful lines that are like short, you know. When when I hear someone else say those, I don't know, those are the ones that I'm like, oh, that's so fun. Like, how much can you say with how few syllables? And earlier you brought up the what's the last song on Haunted Gardens called? I
Oh,
forgot.
from the Gossamer?
Oh, from the Gossamer, yeah. You brought up the line about depression, and that's interesting to me because out of all of the countless references, metaphors, and blah 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 to depression, those lines in that song are probably like the most, in my opinion, like the most just like bluntly honest ones
Hmm.
describing that. So it's interesting to me that you chose those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what makes music so special because I felt that was the why I think it impacted me so much because it was so to the point. It's like this depression thing has robbed me of this, and the way like the following lines, that the way you describe it, the flow too, it's just like it just was like, holy shit, he's really saying that. Like he's really speaking like something I just am feeling so deeply right now that it's like I feel handicapped me. Um,
Yeah, and depending on your situation, it can make you feel like shit, you know, and some people don't enjoy that. I've definitely had a lot of people be like, "Oh, I this project I just can't listen to because it, you know, it brings me back to this thing." And I'm like, "I totally get it, man. You don't have to apologize to
mhm.
me."
Yeah,
Um,
and then yeah, and then you have lines like on like that the one I just mentioned where it's just like I don't know the way you describe the romance here. It's like it's very vulnerable in how like you're kind of just being like I'm almost at your mercy. Like it's just man, yeah, I love that. And um, you know, speaking about your writing more specifically, like describe to me like how you generally write. Like what's your process and particularly how do you find inspiration for the music you create?
um, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'll just be on the freeway and I just think of a line, and or middle of the night, right? Something like sometimes that happens. Usually it's when I when I'm first starting a project and I don't really know what it is yet. I try to be super just open and loose, and like anything that grabs me, I'll just kind of like, you know, do the fucking creativity dance, like the mumble, like until there's a cool line or something. As I start to get to know the project, like sometimes like, oh, I like these songs, I'll put them over here. Like I like this, what's going on here. And then I'll start to kind of try to add more to that. And then I'll be more conscious of the other stuff where it's like, oh, sometimes a song will reference another song that could be interesting. But I try to just, if I feel it, if it makes me feel anything, if it uproots a memory I haven't thought about in a while, if it does anything like human, you know, like,
Mhm.
oh, this makes me focus. I'm not like, then I'll point my energy towards it. Sometimes it just flies. Sometimes it's a track I love and it just doesn't come out right. It depends, but sometimes I can tell in the moment. I'm like, oh, this is one of those. This is gonna be one of those things. Like I don't know. I call it the antenna. Like sometimes the antenna's working.
Yeah, I you mentioned like the you mentioned what'd you say the like how it kind of like you feel that human feeling and it feels like you're focusing like it's reminding me of something I heard you say in another interview where you said that you kind of have this torturous tendency to just think a lot and sometimes you forget to live in the moment and I feel that personally because that's something I feel like I deal with but also I think you're kind of speaking to the fact that like when you kind of hit these moments in your music, it allows you to really feel that classic sense of like presence and it being
Yeah,
in the calm that is it's genuinely special when you can get that.
yeah. I mean, I would imagine that all of us kind of have these certain commonalities, but we just don't like address it or look at it the same way. And I also think certain people are drawn to my music, certain people that maybe think these things, but it's not an easy topic to discuss. It's not something that is ever brought up, or you know, like these common threads of like insignificance, dissatisfaction, frustration with outside forces. Like these things are like you know, pretty human elements, but we kind of address them in different ways, if at all. You know, a lot of people just don't address it. They find God and it's fixed or whatever. But and
Yeah.
with music, I can just kind of swim around in my own little fishbowl of thoughts, and just choose which ones to share.
And so before we get into this new album, I wanted to quickly rewind to a couple of years back with that last collaborative album with No, because truth be told, I think as I mentioned before, like when I got on, actually I don't know if I mentioned it in this conversation, but I may have said it on Twitter or something. But how I got put on your music was like this perfect storm of events where I think Dead End Hip Hop and Mike Seatown in particular were just like bigging you up consistently, and I love their stuff, and I was really starting to get into their channel, so I tapped in. But then also simultaneously, I was really getting into CunninLynguists music in that like 2013 time frame, and I heard one of your features, I think on one of those like Strange Journey
Yeah.
records they had. Yeah, yeah. And it just made me further compelled to dive deeper into your catalog from that point forward. It was really cool to see later on that you've made now a couple records with No. So, I think of No, I think of that your relationship with him because I think it's another example of you being really versatile in your music because like No is a southern to the bone artist. Like like his sound is just so impactful and so powerful and just reminds me of the South so much. Like why do you feel that you connect with No sound and artistry so strongly?
I've always loved No's music. The first time I heard it, I bootlegged a piece of Strange off a rap forum, like way back in the day.
Hmm.
And I was always drawn to his music. Over the years, we ended up like, crossing paths because people were comparing Death is Silent to Art of Dying. And so, over time we crossed paths, but it was a pleasure making that album. It was a slightly different process because like earlier when I said I kind of wear my producer hat in the sense of like kind of putting things together and figuring out how they fit. With him, I don't wear the producer hat. Like his producer hat's so big that all I have to do is like write the songs, write the verses. So that was interesting. I'm not used to letting off the reins, but he's just really great at it. So it's kind of a luxury on top of just the beats being good. So it wasn't like he'd send me a folder and be like, yeah, pick a couple, like how it would normally go. He was more like, okay, here. And then some of these songs, I would send him back the same afternoon. I'm like, done, like make another one. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, we were really cooking on that project. And I know Maulskull, not to speak for him, but he's a huge No fan as well. And you can hear the influence in Oblivion Theater for sure in certain spots. So shout out to No, shout out to Cunnin. That's my
Yeah.
brethren.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of where I was going to go with it because with this new album, I can feel that influence. Maulskull definitely has a different sound overall, but just that feeling
Yeah,
of like you sound really good with those like deep atmospheric kind of synths or like big heavy kind of
yeah,
like cavernous bass and drums. Like that's something that both of them do so fucking well.
yeah. I mean, Maulskull definitely has his signature sound. The only other song I've released on his production was Orange in 2014, and even that you can still hear like the very like 80s. It's almost like chill wave ish.
Hmm.
But yeah, his signatures are definitely there. It was fun working with him because he was just constantly sending me tracks like this one, this one, this one. So uh, my plate was constantly full.
Yeah. And overall with Oblivion Theater, like how did that sound kind of come to be on that record? Like what was the direction you two wanted to take with it, or was it really just Maulskull having a vision for it?
He sent me the beat for what ended up becoming Letter to a Neon Spectre. Um, I rocked that and I just kind of set it aside, and I had just kind of this mountain of demos and songs going for a solo project, which will is getting finished now. I'm getting finishing it. So I set aside for that, and then he just kept. He's like, "Here's another one. Here's another one." And eventually, there were a few, and I was like, "Okay, this could be an EP." And he just keeps going, and then he's like, "Okay, let's have the album talk." Um, and yeah, I got to where I got to design the title and choose the artwork and the kind of direction for that kind of stuff. So And he was open-minded to all to any suggestions I have for like structure changes, or like what places like we should like remove some sounds or add, or just kind of like, I'm a big ebb and flow person.
Mm-hmm.
Just how things like, I really want to give people every reason they can to listen to the album front to back, you know. And so I usually have a lot of like nitpicks for stuff like that. And he's always really open-minded and cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like that those heavy drums we talked about, the atmospheric synths are there, but something I really liked about Maulskull did like throughout the album, there always are these like pretty like I don't know, keys or like little percussion
Yeah,
stuff that just kind of like always kind of litter throughout, just makes it feel really like tight
yeah,
knit.
like so much of that, like right when he would send it, it was already pretty much there, like things like his drums, and like you're saying, like kind of those pretty layers, like um they sound close to the first version. I mean, we mix them and change things
Hmm.
around, but like it's not as drastic as when I work with some other producers in the mixing process. Same with No. No is like his stuff's pretty much like ready to go
Hmm.
when he sends it. But
Yeah, and speaking about like this tight-knit, cohesive nature of Oblivion Theater, it just feels like you really were locked in on a particular feeling or thematic tone. And as we talked about now, like it's always clear that you really put together your albums with a particular intention behind it. So what would you say was like the driving force or kind of inspiration for what you were trying to get across with the Oblivion Theater?
just kind of where I was at. We started it in December. I think it was pretty much done by the end of that summer. So just kind of where I was at in my head, which isn't the best pitch. Sounds pretty boring when I say it out loud, but I had some interesting things going on. I got married in Thailand. My wife and I eloped,
Amazing.
um, and had some really rad experiences in Asia, and um, certain things going on that really found their way into the lyrics. So like Shibari, I wrote that like right after that trip, and there's all these kind of like shit pulled from memories and experiences there. I like the idea of giving visuals to concepts that are intangible, like showing what's unseen is a cool idea to me. I was aiming for a little bit of surrealism and spots where it's like a look of something that's just a concept. So I tried to kind of weave in certain visuals here and there, just little splashes of things that connect between the songs. I think just makes it feel more like one piece. But working with one producer for a whole project, like really obviously helps with cohesion. They're like there's already his own patterns and signatures and tastes that are in everything. So there's already a consistency in a way going there. So I just have to kind of create one with the words.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job of having those visuals, the idea in the imagery. Like there's a lot of different parts of this album where like a good chunk of a verse is just like you painting this particular image that, again, it just communicates this feeling that it is pretty abstract, but it's definitely really, really present. I don't know, I feel it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's that idea of like, yeah, talking about something. Like I think really when I think about some of the main messages or kind of ideas that you're exploring on this album, like a lot of them are, it feels like you're ruminating on like the state of society, but again, in a way that's like not really dating yourself. It's more abstract. And I feel particular lines related to like God. I mean, that's been throughout a lot of your music, but like one line in particular where you're like, why are you afraid of a fair God? That one was that one really hit me hard. I was like, wow. I think you do a really good job of like questioning things in a way that isn't that makes people uncomfortable, which I think is good, but it doesn't really come across like condescending or mean-spirited,
That's nice to
you
hear.
know?
A real quick turn off for me in music is if the condescending thing um, irritates me a lot. So I really hope to never come off like that. Like, I have the sacred knowledge, follow
Hmm.
me, and follow the shepherd.
Mhm.
I'm not into that, but the theme of questioning things and the theme of just like not taking the shit for granted, not like just apply your fucking thought to it, you know, like anything that stirs up questions is interesting to me and valuable. You know, I seek that in books and movies and things that I enjoy or whatever, but I definitely aim for that in music. Just anything that makes you think, you know. Like if why are you afraid of a fair god? If that made you like cock your head for a second, be like, huh, like that's definitely a win for me.
Mhm. And was there any like particular like because you kind of mentioned some of it was like written after your marriage, your wedding recently. Like, was there any kind of particular message or emotion that was special to this album that you wanted to convey?
Not particularly, and if I did, I probably wouldn't say to be honest. But I I think even if I tried to, which I never would, even if I even if I tried to uh, rehash an album or an exact mood again, I don't think it would really come out that accurate. You know, it's just like it's a it's a moving project. You know, like I I feel like I'm a different person every year, so there's something that should be a little different in the output.
And like, given the breadth of your discography at this point, you've created so many different albums. So like, whether it be how you created this, like either be the creative approach or kind of just the output, maybe the lyricism, like what makes this album you think stand out to listeners? Like what do you think that they'll get from this album that they maybe won't get as much from your other work?
I want it to just be a distinct mood. Like if you were to close your eyes and see like the intro trailer or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like if you were to visualize it, I would hope this one is different than the other ones, you know. Part of it is, you know, the artwork, all of it really ties into how we interpret things. You know, I was aiming for something visual in parts. People always naturally compare the new album to, oh, it reminds me of this one or this one. Um, and it's been funny because so far I've gotten more responses where it's like it feels like a mix of A, B, and C and D.
I
So
do agree. I have a similar thought too. Feels like a
yeah,
bit of Haunted
and
Gardens
if
with
that's the
like
case,
altars.
yeah, if that's the case, that wasn't by design, but I could see it. And honestly, like when I'm in it and we're making it, I try to zoom out and see it all as a whole, but like I don't know, you don't really see it as a whole until it's gone and out of your hands. I think when I still have the ability to change it, I can't fully see it far away yet because I'm just like, oh, I'll fix that fucking thing.
That's cool. And I think that visual component, we've said that a few times. I think that's probably the thing that I get from this. It feels like a very, you know, cinematic experience. Like even like how the album starts with like the sound effects, like the person kind of yelling. It seems like you're kind of in a like a yeah, like a in a city where there's some shit going down. It's like a riot or like some kind of like civil unrest is occurring. It it just threw out at me like the that like movie dialogue that ends the album too. Like I really get that visual imagery being like the main takeaway for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, and on that movie dialogue, what was the significance of ending it in that way?
I think about structure and just kind of like what the ebb and flow is, you know, if it were a story or like a movie, you know, what the beats are, where's like the big moments, when do things like calm down, and I usually like to bookend projects with something quieter and that kind of comes in and then out. Like for example, Haunted Gardens. If you have it on repeat, you know, the last song just kind of supposed to just kind of melt into the first song, like experience wise. So for this, it felt more uh, visual, felt like you're bookending it with sounds that you have to imagine. And I don't think it would have really worked as well if it was a different track order.
100%. Yeah, even like the intro is such a perfect thing. Yeah, because it does kind of like start off slow and then the drums kick in like midway through. I do love
Yeah.
that in particular.
Yeah, I really like making intros to albums is something I really enjoy. I like the idea of being able to defy any expectations they have right away. So like with the intro and alters, I was like, whatever they're expecting after this last thing, let's let them know immediately that they're absolutely wrong. And that's pretty fun.
And like speaking of one of the features on this record, Crazy Bone, after hearing you two side by side on a track, it really struck me how much I see like the influence in your music from someone like him because particularly in the flows that you've employed throughout your career that are like verbose but still super catchy and like have a really strong rhythmic feel to it, like you two are real clear technicians of rap. So I wonder like how did like a Bone Thugs and like Crazy Bone, things like that, artists like that serve as inspiration for you in your career?
I mean, like anyone in my age group, I love Bone. East 1999 was a real legendary album for me growing up. Um, as far as like who influenced my flow, Busy Bone always had my favorite flow in Bone, and it didn't influence mine at all because I don't have those vocals. If I'm being honest, Big Pun and Pharoah Monch were probably
Hmm.
two people who I really studied their flows a lot. That were big influences on me that I never hear anybody notice. You know, especially Big Pun. That in the middle, a little Italy did like the tongue twister stuff. You know, I always loved that, and Pharoah Monch, especially Internal Affairs, his timing and his
Hmm.
little pauses and just all the things that make him him. I like to me that was the pinnacle of a flow uh, when I was trying to learn how to rap. You know, there were other rappers that I may have been my favorites more or whatever, but just on like a flow and timing, I really like listen to those two really closely.
Yeah, Monch, I mean like I think of like the intensity that he raps in and like the variety and the versatility he has and he can be, a little calmer, but then like, he has that I'm forgetting the name of it, but the record that dropped like in 2021 that was like more of the rock kind of rap rock thing.
13.
Yeah, yeah, like he has such a huge breadth of of music that he can create, and a lot of it's just because he's such a passionate lyricist, a passionate vocalist, and I obviously get that from you because you can get very amped up, like on the man, like the probably my favorite, maybe like one moment on this album is the end is nigh, that like last verse that you have.
The
Holy shit, like, because that's like the little beat change, and yeah,
bean
I really
part.
have to, yeah. Yeah, like that's, and I really have to give Maulskull credit, like just for the more I listen to this album, the more I'm like realizing how like much these little decisions with like some of the in that particular track, like when there's that middle part where it's like a someone speaking and it's like the segue to that final verse, there's like this really just kind of like loud noise sound, like I don't really know
Sounds
what the
like a thunder metal thing
yeah,
almost.
it's like shit's about to happen, and then you go in with
Yeah,
like your most like impassioned verse. Like it's such a good moment. Love it.
yeah. I like when Maulskull has those like swing for the fences sound choices where it's like, oh, that's a fun choice. Your favorite part.
Yeah, is it fuck around and find out you're not that special?
Yeah, I've been in the zone with my sonic levels. I've been in the zone with like Tarkovsky flicks. Like,
Yeah, it's such a good moment. Yeah, no, overall just I really love the album. But like going forward now, what are you kind of talked about this movie, the screenplay that you're trying to write, which is fantastic. What are some upcoming projects, whether it be merch or even just tour dates that people should look out for?
um, well, I hope people like this record and chew on it for a little bit. But like for what I'm working on, I'm already this has been done for a while. like for me, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna release another LP this year. I'm not sure when, but and then I'll feel it out from there. But I have quite a bit of stuff prepared, I guess.
Nice. You should definitely try to make your way to Toronto. Just gonna put that out there
Yeah,
if you want.
I need to get back on the road. Toronto would be
Yeah.
great. It's been too long.
When was the last time you were here?
I think with CunninLynguists, so it was a minute ago, like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that.
Oh, damn. Yeah,
Too long.
that would be amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Like this was a really
Yeah,
good
my pleasure. Thanks
conversation.
for reaching out.
Yeah, this was a good time and just man, can't say enough how much of a impactful artist you've been in my life, both just as like just seeing the moves you've made, seeing the success you've had. I've seen even like just I have to point out like the engagement you have with your fans is really commendable. Like being in the Patreon and like just how close you keep them. It's just really feels like you care, and that's kind of like it just feels very consistent with the music you make, being so emotionally open. It's just really inspiring, man.
I appreciate that. And it's really about that. Like, I hope it doesn't sound preachy, but the energy, just the fucking connections and the human side of it, over time, I don't know. I've been doing this for a minute, and that's the stuff that sticks in my memory more. And it's really interesting. And I don't know, I feel like a humble servant of something. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's pretty cool seeing that. Just the community, like Discord, and it's cool seeing them make connections. There have been people who've met there who are like married now, or who helped each other with like bills, or like I don't know. It's pretty
Wow.
cool.
That is amazing. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like that's something that I think if people want to like artists upcoming that want to, find some success in their career, I think that idea of being engaged with your listeners and just being like a real person, like it makes
I'm
you
lucky
love the
to even,
music so much
I'm
more.
lucky to even have that opportunity, just to have an audience that cares that much. Like that's such a rare blessing. So like teach their own, people can obviously do whatever the fuck they want, but when some people are so purposely distant from their fans, like
Exactly.
I understand being distant away, but like when they're so like I don't know, it's odd to me.
Mm-hmm. I also feel the same, but yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man, and honor to have you on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Likewise, likewise. Peace.
Peace, bro.
So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.